In 2017, I set up my company, Rise IQ, and in the beginning, it was all focused on medical health and dementia care. And that has actually evolved as I've evolved and as the experiences I'm having have evolved. And it's now called ESG consultancy. So in a nutshell, what I really want to do is help the big brands, who I do feel can change things with their budgets, to behave more sustainably in how they produce things, how they are with their employees and whoever they outsource to, and just in their actions. So as an example of ESG consultancy, I will work with a large brand, say for an example, fast fashion, and they have a huge supply chain, which is not always controlled by them, but it can be managed or at least overseen by them. So what I then come in to do is help them to make sure they're doing that, and also supporting projects that could also enhance their sustainable actions. Like for an example, most of the clothes made by fast fashion, and many are made in Asia, Southeast Asia. So they have big factory floors, many of which are not in ideal conditions. So one of the initiatives would maybe to provide healthcare access to factory workers who otherwise 5,000 people are reliant on one person, and it's quite many are illiterate societies where they don't have any, it's fairly patriarchal and they don't have any knowledge about their own health. So if they have any issues with their menstrual cycles, hormonal issues, they wouldn't have a clue, and they would literally just have to be forced to work or take time off, and that's valuable money for them. That's your day-to-day living. Yes, I mean, the whole point is to try and make the shareholder model and stakeholder model join together. It can't just be profits only. It has to, you're gleaning so much out of this relationship out from this country. It's the responsibility of those companies then who are making so much money to then ensure that the supply chain down the line is treated well, treated fairly, and not abused. So my own experiences over the years, which has shown me that we're all part of one and that all of us have in effect a responsibility to each other, has made me think if it's efficient and effective from a family perspective, from a community perspective, that means surely it should be effective from a global perspective, especially given the situation with our climate at the moment. So in fact, working with these companies to do that, I think I'm trying to drive that message through to them. Of course, we have capitalism. Of course, some of that is good, some is bad. That's with everything. But at least if you're going to glean a benefit from a community or society, then you must be willing to give back and make their lives better. Telling people they should be doing something, they should be more ethical, will always be met with resistance. None of us like to be told what to do, especially large companies, people in large positions. So for me, I find you always have to tie it to profit somehow, or more efficiency, more productivity, less absenteeism. And it has to make sense as a business case. And I feel that's the biggest challenge, because we're in a world right now that it's quite a nascent area when it comes to measuring these impacts. There's not one general impact measurement. So again, that's open to manipulation. It's open to different perception. And I feel in time that will become more regulated and more, more linear, which I think it needs to be to get more buy-in.
Okay.
So I was at a dinner last week, and we were all talking about what can solve this. And one of the company's founders actually said, well, you just simply stop production and that's it. No manufacturing for 3 years. And I said, okay, although that's altruistic, that sounds like it may solve a problem, you're not really thinking about it from what benefits manufacturing and this capitalism has brought. You can't just stop. If I just told you, stop working on your company now and stop making money, would you just do it because it's the right thing to do? No, of course not. And I think nobody would. If someone, we're all trying to earn a living, make a difference. Well, some of us are trying to make a difference. So all of us are trying to live and make a living. So you can't just take that away from people. Therefore, for me, the solution is having to work together, having to, I wouldn't even say convince. I think you almost have to evidence that doing this is the best thing to do, not just the right thing to do. And unless, if you're just running a fast fashion business, for instance, you're not going to see what journey your supply chain takes. You're in the upper echelons. You're not going to have exposure. So how would you ever feel it? For you see the numbers. And if you see the numbers and they make sense and they signify growth. When I look at companies, yes, what do I look at? I look at, does it make sense? Will it be continued growth? Is it worthy of an investment? And that's what I feel linking all these initiatives to that profit is the only way to probably convince the bigger brands to do this. Right now, we have a golden opportunity. We're in an era where being sustainable is fashionable, dealing with racism is fashionable, looking at all these inequalities and reacting to them is fashionable. So I feel we need to seize this window and actually utilize it, going into these companies who are already doing this out of public perception or other need, and then really going deeper and making them understand why it makes sense and why it's still can be profitable whilst running your company sustainably. There was a time I started thinking about rubbish after I had my first child, and I started watching Sopranos, and they were gangs, but they actually controlled the waste management of a city, which I found was, I don't know actually what I felt. I thought, how does this actually happen? And then I saw them dump, or they effectively collected all the rubbish, and then they just went to another area and dumped it. And then I looked into that further, thinking, I realized when you have children, you actually notice how much more rubbish you create daily, not just with packaging, but rubbish in general. And I just thought, where's this going? Where is this going? Every single day, my bin is filled up every week. Millions and millions of bins are filled up every week. The rubbish truck comes. Where does it actually go? It can't all sit in landfill. We're not allowed to. I learned that we sent our rubbish abroad, which to me seemed ridiculous. You're going from polluting your own air, and you think, well, we've run out of space. Let's ship it to another country. How does that make sense on a global perspective? Why does that happen? And we can, as humans, we've developed travel to the moon. We've developed these incredible, in science, we've made these incredible discoveries. We've done so many intelligent, out of the world things. Why hasn't anyone managed to think about waste collection? Yes, we have this ridiculous pile of plastic in the middle of the ocean in massive patches. That's a huge problem in itself. But how about the initial way of collecting rubbish? The model is wrong. I don't understand why anybody has not come up with an efficient solution. It frustrates me. Yes, then you think of waste everywhere. Then you look at the fashion industry and you see the figures, the data first. I'm data driven. Data of what they produce. And then there was that stories in the news about unsold seasons incinerated. Millions and millions of clothes values incinerated. And yet, on the flip side, you have people living with no clothes, no warmth, no home. Again, what a massive disconnect. What an incredible, ridiculous, pointless disconnect.